Clever.
Believe it or not, we are on the final stretch of this build. The next task is to add in a support structure for this front end. So I'm going to put a cross in here and in here. I've popped the rack back in so I know exactly how much space I've got to work with, because I want the support to be as close to the rack as possible. It's been held there loosely by magnets, but there's the internal bracing for this whole front end structure. It really could do with some more at the top, but the rack is basically in the way, so this will do it, I hope. Well, it's been a late day, but I've put in now the support for this front end structure, so we're going to have a lot more rigidity. If I can remember correctly, I think there's 4 more things I need to do. I need to mount it in a steering column bearing to hold the steering column up. I also need to mount in the fuel tank correctly, so it's mounted to the chassis rather than the diffuser. I also need to put in some form of exhaust support, which didn't really exist towards the back of the car, but that's just a bracket somewhere, so that won't be too difficult. And then there's one more thing, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. Well, there's still 4 more things. So I also need to add a tow hook, particularly at the front. There's actually a gap in the bodywork for the radiator exit somewhere around here, so I'll attach it to somewhere so it can just stick up and act as a tow hook. I've actually managed to find one and ordered that online, so hopefully it's just a weld-on piece. And also I need to do the prop shaft restraining straps as well. Hopefully middle of this week we can start painting, and that'd be great if I could get the paint in before the weekend, and then we can actually start building the car. We're going to start today with the steering column. I need to add this bearing so that we can support the steering column both at the driver end and at somewhere other point as well, down in the car. Obviously we need to miss all the carburetor bits and everything as well, and obviously miss my knees and everything around there, so we've got to find a suitable place for this. I've popped the steering rack and column back in, and also the covering panel here. Now, this being 19mm or 3/4 inch, I can only really place it between here and here because it won't slip over anything else. If I put it here, then it's going to get in the way of anything that's here, so I think the best location is going to be here. I mean, ideally you want it further down the column because you want to support it at the furthest end, but I think here is going to be the best place because it's out of the way. My knees are definitely not going to get in the way of it. So yeah, I think I'm just going to drop it down here. What I tried to do, in theory, made sense. So this is the 3/4 steering column rose joint, and it should just go nicely into that tube there. Weld on a nut, job done. So I tried it, and then obviously because of welding isn't perfect, the misalignment meant that this wouldn't go in properly. So I chopped it off, did it again, fully inserted this, and welded it on all the way around. And basically the same thing happened. It just got a bit of misalignment, and to get this thing out, I know this is going in smoothly now, but that's not really what happened. It'll only go on that so far. I've mullered this to try and get it out, and all these threads are completely. So this idea was not really a good one. I mean, if I take this off, focus please. If I take this off, come on, and try and put on a fresh nut, it's just not having it. It's just not having it. So all these threads are mullered. This is mullered. I'm gonna have to get another one. So that was not a good idea in the end. So what I've done is I've made a plate. Oops, I've dropped a plate. I've made a plate that I'm gonna just weld a nut to, and that'll do. So simple. does look like it's been laser cut with a lightsaber, so it's not the perfect finish, but it'll do for now. And I'm just going to weld the nut on, and then when the new one of these arrives, I'll weld it up to the top of the loop for the steering, well, for the cockpit space. That loop there. Job done. Tow hooks. I've managed to procure this, so I need to get a piece of bodywork out so I can find the right location for this to sight onto the body. There's nowhere really at the front, so it can't really poke out the front. It's going to have to stick out the middle of the car somewhere here and be attached to part of this frame somewhere here. So like I said, some bodywork on, and see if we've got a spot where this can stick out. I'm not sure if that's the exact location for that piece of bodywork, but it's roughly about right. So the hook needs to poke out above that. That's a long way to go. Something that I hadn't really thought about until basically a week ago was a tow point. All racing cars now must have a tow point. I think 4 if you've got a touring car, but we can get away with 2, one at the front and one at the rear. Now at the rear, I'm just going to put a loop around the axle. I've seen that done, and apparently that's okay. It's not ideal, but there's not really much structure there that I can get to and get a tow point on. At the front, where I've got the radiator and everything, there's no structure there, and I hadn't really thought about it to provide any. So the only other option really is to go up and out the bodywork. Now this bodywork, this is the front bonnet here, does have an exit opening for the radiator. So I can use that to actually put a tow hook in. So here's a tow hook. It needs to have 60mm internal diameter, which this one does. It's a laser cut piece, this one. And I'm just going to connect some structure here to the chassis, which will help support the chassis as well, and then build it up so that this extends above the bodywork. It's a lot of weight up high. I don't really like it, but I haven't really got enough time to think of another solution, so that's what I'm going to go with. I may change it at a later date. But one of the benefits of having this tow point here is it is going to make getting the car on and off the trailer a lot easier, because there'll be a nice easy tow point at the top of the car that shouldn't damage any bodywork, hopefully. There you go, it's not on yet, but that's the approximate location. So it's going to stick out quite tall, but it'll be a nice easy access point for both the marshals and me to tow from.